and welcome to the first hearing roundtable in 2025. The program of hearing roundtables started during the pandemic. At that time, that was the only way we could communicate and change information, and it was good. It was so good that we decided to keep going on with this program of roundtables, online roundtables. And this has been very successful. We've been more than 5 years doing this, and we will continue doing this program of hearing roundtables. So welcome all for the hearing roundtable program. This is the hearing group. I don't know if you've heard about the hearing group, but we are a very active group, including 36 centers fully dedicated to hearing restoration. You have, as you can see in the map, we have 2 centers in India, and we have centers all over the world, and we are dedicated to hearing problems. Our pillars, the points that support this group are basically innovation through research. It's a group which is comprehensive. It means that we deal with all kinds of hearing problems, and we solve problems from the basic adhere or just even the passive middle ear implants to the most advanced techniques with ABIs. So everything is included. We try to educate not only experts like you connected now here, but also patients, and we are proactive. I like to describe this group as a group of friends that share a common interest on hearing problems. We are really good friends. Since 2008, the hearing group started to create clinical standards, and the clinical standards have been one of our main works during these years. Just a few words about this event. This is a hybrid event. Hybrid, as all of you know, means that we have the panelists here, we have people in the audience, a lot of people, we have a room full of attendants, and we have people connected online. And the idea is that it should be interactive. Interactive means that you here in the room, you should ask questions to the panel, and the people being connected online is also, we want you to participate by raising your hand. You have a chat, by raising your hand on the chat and sending us your questions or comments. And the whole event is going to be recorded. We are recording the presentations. We cannot record the people here in the audience, so when you say something, use the microphone that we can hear, but you will not be on the screen. And the idea today is to deal with fitting problems. Is fitting an art or a science? Is just pure mathematics, like 8 times 4 is 32, or it's more than that? It includes a personal touch in fitting. And there's another long word there, a long sentence there after the art of science, and it's, what is this important for surgeons? Here in Chennai, in the audience, we have 2 surgeons, Professor Mohan Kameswaran and myself. All the other are audiologists or non-surgeon experts. So I hope in the connection online, we have also more surgeons, but we want to learn from the audiologists. Why do we need the surgeons? Do we need to know more about fitting? And to show you that this is going to be an interactive event, please bring your phones, take your phones, scan this QR code, and people here in the audience, you also scan your QR codes from this presentation, and we are going to ask you, just to start, 2 very basic questions. Which country are you from? I suppose the blue big thing in the middle is India. Exactly. Well, first point for me, it was India, Chennai, world. Wow. We don't have people from outer space, I think. All of them are from the world. Nepal, I see Saudi Arabia, France. Okay, now, can we move to the second question? What is your field of expertise? And now the big answer will be audiologists, exactly. The two surgeons are probably coming from outside because neither Professor Mohan and me are answering. So we have a great majority of people from the audiologic standpoint, from the audiologic field. We have one technician, 4 surgeons, 6 speech and language pathologists, 2, I cannot see the words here. What's the yellow? Researchers, and 46 audiologists. Okay, so this is just to break the ice. We have started with this. And now, today, Roundtable is going to be like a journey. You are going to travel all over the world to receive the information from different experts from different countries. And the advantage of this trip is that you will not have any jet lag because we'll travel immediately to different places and come back to Chennai here where we are. So to start with our trip, let's go to Europe. We are in Germany and Poland to meet Professor Anja Kurz from Würzburg in Germany and Professor Artur Lorens from Warsaw. The idea today is to have teams. We have 2 people on each team, and they are going to show a case, and we will discuss fitting issues about this case. Anja is the technical lead at the Comprehensive Hearing Center of Würzburg in Germany, and as you probably know, this center runs a very large hearing implant program covering all implantable hearing devices and conducts up-to-date research on intraoperative monitoring, fitting, and hearing performance with all types of hearing implants, both in adults and children. Anja has over 15 years of experience in this world and is a very active member of the hearing group. Professor Lorens, Artur, is the professor and head of the Department of Auditory Implant and Perception of the World Hearing Center at the Institute of Physiology and Pathology of Hearing in Warsaw, in Poland. He has received the first award from the Minister of Health and Social Welfare for outstanding achievements in healthcare. And we at Hearing, as a group, are very happy to have Professor Lorens as one of our more active members. And now they are going to show you their case.
Good afternoon to the audience here in the room and the audience worldwide. This case will be about fitting, including anatomy-based fitting and EAS. So to start with, we have this beautiful cochlea. And what we also know is that we have a tonotopic organization in our cochlea. We know where the low frequencies are, we know where the high frequencies are, and we are learning more and more about the physiology. However, for us audiologists, the pictures that we've been seeing for many, many years looks like that. So for all the surgeons in the world, this is what we are looking at after we have established the threshold and the MCL levels in our patients. So afterwards, we have the possibility to actually see on which frequency band is used with which frequency, with which center frequency. This is the standardized logarithmic fitting. And it's always the same, regardless which electrode length you have been chosen. However, there is the concept of anatomy-based fitting, and it means that actually we know where the electrode contacts are. And we have so the possibility to actually think, does it make sense that we are stimulating at a certain frequency? And we are now able to shift the frequency bands to the actual place in the cochlea where it's taking place. So for us audiologists, the fitting window, the frequency distribution becomes much more obvious. As you can see here in our frequency table, the green dots are actually the real electrode contacts. And now we have an idea if the frequency bands that are allocated over the electrode contacts really make sense. And this is where the fun starts. So one more thing, anatomy-based fitting is a very, very popular topic at the moment. But we're using it in research, and in my group, we have done a lot of research, and there are other great people in the world that are using this concept, trying to show that we can actually improve sound quality and improve speech understanding. So this has been shown in several publications in SSD patients, in bilateral patients, and so on. However, there are often clinicians that say, okay, in theory, it's nice, but how do I actually do it every day? So today we're going to show you an example of how we can do it in a real example. And there's something else that is really happening for all of you that are in the field now for a longer time. The indication criteria for CIs are shifting all the time. They are becoming more relaxing in many, many countries. This means our patients, more of our patients do have residual hearing.
So if we have a residual hearing, there is another challenge because we need not only to try to do the anatomy-based fitting and be accurate to the tonotopical organization of the cochlea, but we want to combine that with acoustic hearing. That's why I'm going to present a case and we will discuss how we can do the best fitting for this particular case. So this is 34 years old patient, male. What is actually quite interesting is that on the other side, it is a normal hearing. So for the qualification criteria, we can say that this is SSD patients, but still in implanted ear, we have residual hearing, and the electrode is flex 26. And this is the audiogram in the implanted ear before surgery and after surgery. And when we are looking at this audiogram, we can actually think about the frequency that this low frequency hearing is stopping, and it is somewhere around 300 Hertz. But we can also do the autoplan evaluation after a surgery. So we can see exactly where electrode is sitting, especially electrode 1 is of our interest. And in this case, the electrode 1 is 880 Hertz. So we have quite big cochlea because this is the flex 26. This gives us the clue that if we want to actually be tonotopically correct, our fitting should actually follow these rules. So we can have actually two options. As I mentioned, we can see from the audiogram 65 dB point, and this corresponds to the frequency around 300 Hertz. And we can use, let's say, traditional EAS strategy. But in this moment, the first electrode will be tuned to the frequency of 400 Hertz. So it will be something which we call mismatch. And mismatch is when the electrode is sitting in position around 800 hertz, but we are programming different frequency in our system. And this is here the example around 200 hertz. What is this mismatch? Mismatch is that we put the information of 200 hertz in the place tuned to 800 hertz. So we shift actually the pitch which can patients perceive. So instead of a low pitch like ooh, we can hear a little bit higher pitch. Ee. So this is like a frequency transposition system. Patients can adopt to that, but it takes time and effort. On the other side, so this is this mismatch which go actually for the all electrodes, and the other option is to be tonotopically correct, program the electrode one to 880 hertz, but in this moment we have a gap in frequency because our acoustic hearing is finishing at around 400 hertz. Now we have a gap, and from 800 hertz, we have electric hearing. So you see this scenario, acoustic, gap, and electric. And now, what is better? What is better to our patient? This is dilemma to discuss.
Okay, so this goes with ABF, anatomy-based fitting. So to start with the question, for people here in the audience, how many of you use ABF as a routine? I don't see a single hand raised. So do you all use ABF? The people from the panel? Well, I'm not asking you, Mohan, but the others. Dayse?
Yes, we do. We are using it routinely now. I do have to say that in Australia, CT scan is not a standard procedure post-op. So that's why we were not doing it in the past, and now we are because we can use the X-ray.
Griet?
Yes, we are doing it also routinely. We perform.
This microphone is not working well.
So, oh, now it is. Yes, thank you. So yes, we are doing it routinely in every CI case. So we do a CT scan prior to surgery to define the appropriate electrode length, and postoperatively to use the anatomy-based fitting.
Okay, now you have to convince 80 people that they need to do that. How you do it?
Well, there's the clear evidence in literature already. There are so many groups around the world that have now really jumped on the train and actually trying it. I mean, the prerequisite is that we need post-operative imaging. And the better the image is, the better the detection, the automatic detection algorithm from Autoplan is working. And especially Autoplan has evolved a lot. So it has become very, very easy because there are so many versions out there. So you just have to make sure that you have a good image after surgery, and then you just press a couple of buttons, you get the information imported into the fitting software, and then finally it's clear to you what is happening in the cochlea of the patient sitting in front of you. And don't we want to have the best fitting for our patients? I'm sure we all want that. So I think it's very logical to make sure that the frequency we are stimulating, the frequency band, just matches to the place in the cochlea. So it's an easy concept, and that's what we're trying to do.
Artur, convince them shortly.
I agree with Anja.
Okay, that was really short. Okay, question from the audience. While you ask your questions, I mean, is there a need? You said Autoplan is needed. Is there a need of more sophisticated technology that maybe not everyone is able to find it? Or this is something we can all do? I mean, not surgeons, but you can all do.
Well, as I just said, I mean, Autoplan has evolved a lot. When I remember the first versions, it was quite tricky. And especially for me as an audiologist, I had no clue what I was looking at. And I have to admit that I have some brilliant colleagues who actually know exactly when you do see NCT and the cochlear, they know exactly where something is located. So, however, there are many versions out there. It has become easier and easier so that also audiologists or other technicians, so non-surgeons, can actually use it.
Okay, so Ranjit, you don't use ABF? We don't have sound in Ranjit's mic. Now we do.
No, we don't. We have not started using ABF yet.
Okay, and did they convince you?
To some extent.
So no, that means no in English. so go ahead.
Well, I'm completely satisfied with their answer. There's no second thought about it. The ABF produces much better quality of sound perception.
Okay, good. That's a good point. How many of you are using Autoplan? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, not like 10, 12 hands on, no more than that. And we are 60 or 80 people here, so it's not a large number. And so is this something that we can use for every patient? Because, well, the results, as Ranjit was mentioning, are not as good as we expect. I mean, just matching frequencies sound, for the stupid mind of a surgeon, sounds a very normal thing to do. I mean, if I hear 800 when I have to hear 800, it's good, but it's not so good for every patient. Great, go ahead.
Yes, I think it is not only for surgeons to play around, not only for audiologists, but we also even use it during our intake procedures with CI candidates to show and to visualize how the cochlea looks, how an electrode selection looks like, how a deep electrode insertion looks, what's the effect on the audiogram, even a 3D audiogram. So it's not only for surgeons, not only for audiologists, but yeah, even more than that.
Dayse,
I think that
every patient?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I think that if the two is there, I think that all the research that we do is exactly for the benefit, the translation, all right, to translate this into benefit of the patient. So I don't see why not to do Autoplan if all of them is available. And I think that's a very good teaching tool. That's what I would add to the picture as well.
And Anja, well, looks like it may be used for every patient. For every electrode, 24 millimeters, 20 millimeters, 28 millimeters, 34 millimeters?
Well, it depends on a condition. You cannot really look at the ear isolated. There's always a second ear. So ABF works best when you are matching it to something. And the rule, what we have learned or what we've learned from our studies is that we need complete cochlear coverage on the other side. And that can be either by using an electrode, which is really covering the whole length, or we are using a normal hearing ear, because in a normal hearing ear, we have the natural tonotopicity. And this is something that we've learned. Anatomy-based fitting needs a matching to something, a natural acoustic matching or a full electrical matching. And by doing this, it makes no difference if the other side has a shorter coverage, because there we are able to really stimulate on the places where the frequencies are elicited, and the brain will combine the two of them. So this is what our studies are showing, that by individualizing cases like that, it might be that the speech understanding isolated for one side becomes poorer. But however, we are all hearing with two ears. So this means the binaural effects, the hearing with two ears, overcome all the disadvantages. And that's why we could show in our studies that hearing becomes much better if we apply anatomy-based fitting following these rules.
Artur.
Just one comment, because at the beginning, the anatomy-based fitting was designed for long electrodes. So usually standard or 28. But if we have a case like we are now presenting, we are assuming that some part is acoustic. So at that moment, we can have a short electrode. But of course, audiologists are dependent on surgeon who preserve hearing. So to use a full capacity of such an EAS combination, we need a good preservation. And next, we can actually optimize, as we are now trying to actually demonstrate, even if that could be some small gap between acoustic and electric hearing.
Okay, Artur, I saw we were guilty for that. Mohan, you are responsible for not being able to use ABF. Anyway, but I have two questions from the chat. One of it, I like it. It's saying, could advanced AI apps substitute or take over ABF? You're not prophet. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but AI will do a lot of things that we are now doing with different tools. What do you think? Artificial intelligence may they change the field and Dayse?
Bring it on. That's what I can say. I think that we are all the time talking about, is AI going to take over? Well, depends how we behave along, right? I think that we have to make the most of it. And to a certain degree, Autoplan is already doing it. When we started using Autoplan, we had to go and mark everything ourselves. Now you can just load the imaging and Autoplan will do it.
Yes, Anja.
So I think for the use of Autoplan to detect it automatically, I mean, you need huge data sets. So I think AI and application of Autoplan, yes, why not? But when it comes then to fitting, I think we are not there yet. And what we want to achieve is individualized fitting for every patient. So I think we will need many, many data sets. And first of all, we need to create automatic sequences. We need to understand the rules. When is it working? When is ABF working? Under which condition? And so on. So I believe what we have established nicely is that we need complete coverage, cochlear coverage on one side. But there's a lot of things that we need to learn about what is happening, when we have acoustic fitting on the other side, talking about hearing aids, when we have this bimodal combination. This is really, really tricky, and there is quite some research needed. And however, I'm sure that we need to define algorithms that whenever we have certain conditions, that we get fitting suggestions. But once we have established all of them, an algorithm can learn, we can use AI.
Okay, last question for you, Artur. This is the other question from the chat. Is the opposite. Is X-ray post-implant good enough for ABF? So from artificial intelligence to plain X-ray.
Yeah, I think it is good enough, and because of Autoplan. And just one comment about AI. We are artists. So maybe in the future, AI would be an artist too, but still now, this is this philosophical question, science on art. I think that we really need to take into account personality of patients and emotions, and this is much more complex. So we need to be a little bit artist.
Okay, so science and art. This presentation will have 3 minutes at the end for the presenters to give the reveal. They will tell us what they did. That's not right or wrong, but this is their solution to this problem. So, Anja, Artur, come here, and you have less than 3 minutes for the reveal.
Okay, so let's go to our case. We need to go back. There we are. So there are two options. And one option was as you remember, this gap, but ABF, and one was this mismatch, and these are the outcomes of speech tests. So we did this carefully. We started with 6 months evaluation, and next we did 9 months evaluation. So from this speech discrimination, seems to be obvious that the optimal fitting is according to ABF principles. So we just impose a little bit of gap, so some information may be loose, but in this particular case, especially please remember the normal hearing from the other side, just strict ABF produce better speech discrimination 6 months and also 9 months after activation.
What we wanted to show with this case was that we believe that every cochlea needs individual fitting. And although we are presenting here this case and saying ABF really makes sense, we need to understand the needs of every patient, and every cochlea is different. So this fitting approach really worked nicely in the case that we showed. However, there may be other EAS candidates where the frequency allocation that is provided for the electrical stimulation only is just fine. However, on the speech level testing, we could increase it. If this is not true for a huge population, Arthur will reveal in a couple of months when his study has finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anja. Thank you, Artur. Now, who's going to try ABF here in the audience? Ranjit, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, good. You convinced them. It's not all of them, but it's like 3 or 4 who said yes. Okay, so let's continue our journey. And now we're traveling to the rest of the world. We're traveling at the same time to Australia and Europe. And we are in Australia to meet Dayse Tavora, and in Belgium to meet Professor Griet Mertens. Griet is the professor at the University of Antwerp and is coordinating the clinical cochlear implant research program at the ENT department of the Antwerp University Hospital in Belgium. She is the co-author of more than 40 papers in various national and international journals and has presented her research outcomes at more than 50 international conferences. We're delighted to have Griet among the distinguished members of the hearing group, and Professor Dayse Tavora-Vieira. She's the head of the audiology department at the Fiona Stanley Hospital and the adjunct associate professor at the Medical School of the University of Western Australia. Her research has been focused on treating single-sided deafness and associated tinnitus with cochlear implants. We are very happy to have Dayse among our renowned experts, and she can give you the presentation of the case in Portuguese, Spanish, English, and maybe Indian. Go ahead.
Thank you, Xavier, for the kind and nice introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, we received this template from the hearing to prepare our slides. And please have a look at the lady on the right-hand side. We photographed her a little bit so that she matches the topic that we will discuss. Indeed, Dayse and I, we will talk about cochlear implantation in our older CI recipients. Now, why focusing on this older population? Because it's a well-known fact that our world population is growing and aging thanks to the improved living standards worldwide. We know 25% of the European population is aged 60 years or older, so a really growing population. when we had a look at our database in the Antwerp University Hospital, there we saw that more than 40% of our CI recipients is aged 65 or older at the day of implantation, and 5% is even 80 years or older at the day of activation.
Okay, so let's just look at our case. I think that the data Griet presented is a reality for all of us, right? Our population is growing older. So what we chose is an 89 years old gentleman with a long-standing history of noise exposure. He has been aided since the age around 30. The hearing loss has progressed to a profound level. We'll show you the audiogram in a second. He's currently wearing power hearing aids, but of course, this is just giving him hearing awareness. Unfortunately, you have to write everything for him to be able to understand. He does not have any balance symptoms. His vestibular function tests were normal. He does have bilateral tinnitus. And of course, as we would expect, he feels very isolated as he cannot communicate with his family and particularly grandchildren. So we do cognitive screening. So he scored 23 out of 30. For those who are not familiar, the normal results would be 26 and above. So there is a little cognitive decline there, but it's not like major. He lives independently with his wife, and he has 3 children and grandchildren who live local and are very good support for him. He doesn't really have a lot of, there is no major health issues. And one of the main issues he is provoked by the hearing loss because of the social isolation. So that's the hearing loss there. And I guess the question is, would you implant this gentleman?
Okay. So the discussion. Who are here in the audience going to implant an old guy, 89-year-old? They didn't buy the book. It's been like, and who is not going to do that? The others are not going to do that, or is just that you don't have hands? No, I think they don't have hands because no one is not going to implant and only 4 are going to implant and we are here like 60 people. So I don't understand very well the question. So would you all use the cochlear implant for this guy? So there's no limit, age limit for cochlear implant? There's no limit for cochlear implant. Mohan.
Yeah, age is only a number. And when you get to my age, you start believing it even more. So I think, you have to look at the other parameters. He's a very fit 86-year-old from what I can hear, because he has no other comorbidities. He's a very healthy man. He has a very supporting family. He has grandchildren. And believe me, when you have grandchildren, the most important thing is to communicate with them, and everything else is important. I keep telling my children, that if I had known grandchildren were such a joy, I would have skipped having children and gone straight for grandchildren. So that's the important thing. So, that's very important motivation for the man. So I think you have to think in his terms, not in any rigid terms that people.
I totally agree with you. And now, let's see. A tinnitus. He had tinnitus, right? Griet? He had tinnitus, yeah. So this may be something to propose a CI, not propose a CI, or it doesn't matter.
The fact that he has tinnitus. The fact that he has tinnitus.
Yeah.
Well, this probably, I think that is even one more reason, all right?
More reason
to implant him, because it is very likely that we can probably at least decrease the tinnitus awareness after implantation. Because with this hearing loss level there, this hearing aid is really not giving him anything.
Okay, so there is something, the screen is having a problem. there is something that I don't understand. The green dots are hearing aids, right?
That's
and
correct, yeah.
speech discrimination with these green dots is 0%.
Correct.
I'm a surgeon. Why can be that? I mean, what's going on with the low frequencies? It's 35, 45 dBs. So this is useless, absolutely useless.
Absolutely useless. The only thing that you are getting there is awareness, and probably the only thing that you are adding is distortion, right? There is no way to provide speech discrimination with this level of hearing loss. You can detect sound, but it could be just really the rest is just distortion.
Good, perfect. And about the MoCA, it had 23/30. Can you explain a little bit more about that? And because it looks like it may be good, 23/30, but it's not so good, or am I wrong?
Yes, it's below the average, and that's what we see in the majority of our older CI recipients with some severe hearing loss. We know from literature that there's growing evidence that patients with hearing loss are more at risk to develop this accelerated cognitive decline. So to me, this is even like an extra motivation to go for CI and not to wait longer, because maybe if we wait too long, they are already too far gone. So it's an extra motivation, this factor.
Okay, any question from the audience? Yeah, you have a question. Okay, go ahead, Mohan.
The question I wanted to ask the audiologists is that, you know, you have a low MoCA and you've intervened, you've done an implant. Do you see the reversal? And if so, at what rate do you see? You know, do you see an improvement in their cognitive function? And if so, you know, is it individual or is there a sort of, you know, mark that you have in 6 months, 1 year?
Who wants to answer?
Yeah, we do see in some patients an improvement, and I think that's mainly when they come to the clinic before surgery. They are already quite isolated. They avoid social events, they avoid communications with friends and social activities. And after implantations, one, they are very optimized, fitted. Then they start going out again, getting social again, and this has a positive effect on their cognitive capabilities.
Okay, cognitive may improve with the cochlear implant. And what's the importance? Because you mentioned that the family support, grandchildren, you said, Dayse? What's the importance of that?
Listen, I think that for the older population, this is essential. Our data is very similar to, in our center, very similar to what a Griet presented in terms of like the percentage of the 80 plus. And what is very important is if they have family support, you know already that you have a very positive starting point. We have patients, for example, who don't have family, they are living in a nursing home. So you actually have to prepare your rehab based on the reality of these patients. It's not a selection criteria per se, but you need to be ready to be able to support this patient. In this case, he was perfect because he has all the support that he needs. So the family needs to be on board. No, that is not a miracle, that they are going to need to help us through the process. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Oh my God. Go ahead. We're all ears. May we have a microphone there, please? We have a question from the audience. May we have a microphone there? Back there. The lady on yellow.
So my question is that would cortical potentials have a role to play while deciding for candidacy in older CI subjects? Maybe in this case it's profound hearing loss, but in general, would cortical potentials have a role there?
Dayse, go ahead.
Back to me. Absolutely. You know, from what I presented today, I'm really pro a cortical because you can use with from 0 to 100, literally. And with the older population, is actually very useful. Particularly, we have several cases where the cognitive decline has gotten to a point where they are not able to give us a reliable response, and we actually rely on the cortical potential.
All agree? Yeah. Is it okay?
Yes,
More
thank you.
questions? Okay, I have one for you. Who will use 2 cochlear implants for this patient? Not a single hand. Again, they have no hands. Yes. 1, 2. Oh, now they have hands. Okay. They were with hands in the pockets. So raise your hands. Well, quite a large number of people here in the audience are raising their hands. So maybe we have a lot of supporters of the bilateral cochlear implant. Who of you would do a bilateral cochlear implant on 89? No, Mohan, you don't say that because you're close to that age. But I mean, young people. Who will do that from the young people here? Daisy, you do?
We do, yes. we
Griet,
do.
you also will do?
In Belgium, we don't have reimbursement for the contralateral sides.
And apart from a theoretical, no, I mean, from practical standpoints,
Then yes.
from a conceptual standpoint, it will be indicated, it will be something that could be considered normal and advisable.
Yes, we do have some patients that pay themselves for the contralateral sides, also the older ones.
Anja, you're covered. The second implant is covered in Germany.
Yeah, the second one would be covered. And the question is if the patient is fit enough to undergo surgery again. I think this is one of the criteria that we would be discussing in our team. I mean, we would see that there's a huge benefit on one side, and if it's the patient who wishes to get it also CI on the other side, yes, why not? Then we have the anesthesia, and if they say thumbs up, yeah, why not?
In Poland?
Yes, we can do the second implant, but I think that it is good to evaluate the outcome of the first one and also use individualized approach and discuss that with patients and respect their needs.
Okay, Mohan, as a young surgeon, what are the main drawbacks of using bilateral cochlear implants on a 90-year-old patient? I mean, balance, skin. What are your concerns?
Well, I think the main thing is the vestibular function. You see, if you're doing a bilateral implant in a pediatric, I would do it simultaneously. I would have no problems at all. But in an 89-year-old, I would probably do it sequential for the simple reason that, the vestibular symptoms are much more pronounced in an elderly person, and vestibular compensation takes much longer time in the elderly. So it would be much more sensible to do one side and then see, like Artur said, see the outcomes, see how he's benefiting. If he's really happy with it, is he using it? And then if he is, then, we would definitely be happy to do the second side. I think the question of, is he fit for the second side is not a big problem, because if he's fit for the first side, then very likely then, a few months later, he would be, unless something drastic has happened, he should be fit on the second.
Good. So just very short answer from each one of you. What are the advantages of having a bilateral cochlear implant at 90?
Less effort, less listening effort.
Less
Listening effort.
listening effort.
Increased life quality.
Increased life quality.
And maybe in case of the tinnitus, also reduction in the contralateral side.
Okay, tinnitus.
And directionality. Directionality.
Right, directionality. And Daisy?
Hearing his grandchildren, I assume that he probably have a very age difference in grandchildren, so hearing a noise.
Okay, so it looks like it's a very good option to have that, and the disadvantages are not so. And where will you not use a 90-year-old bilateral cochlear implant? What conditions do you need to say no? This is not a good option.
Well, when the outcome of the first year was poor, and then it is the expectation that the second one will be much better. So if the training for the first ear was not good enough or not intensive enough and the outcome is poor, we cannot believe that the second ear will be better because there's a lot to do anyway.
But I will play the devil's advocate. If the first side was not good and you don't try the second side, you will never get improved. The only chance that patient has to improve, I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Yes, but this is also about counseling. This is about setting expectations right. So, and especially in the counseling processes, what can we expect? How is the speech perception with the hearing aid before? And we saw very, very poor. So yes, we can gain a lot. And then if the outcome with the CI is not that good, we need to question ourselves. Okay, which factor is it? I mean, has there been an improvement in the cognitive function? Or what is the reason why there has been no improvement? So this is something we need to consider.
Okay, if you don't have a speech therapist, a good speech therapist for this patient, this may create doubts about what to do. Griet?
I think, as in every CI patient, rehabilitation after cochlear implantation is a very important factor to have in place. And if a patient is in a nursing home and you don't have the access to oral rehabilitation, we don't have the answer yet, but maybe in the future we can use the applications on phones to instruct the nurses living close to these older adults, like the Ready app or other rehab material, to have it in the nursing home so that they don't have to come to the clinic for the rehab. Maybe that will be a solution.
Okay, and I think my last question before, is there any question there? No. My last question before we move to the reveal, a fine motor ability in these kind of patients is not good. So having to handle one device is not easy. Now you put me two. What do I do? Dayse.
No, listen, I see your point, but there are a lot of very simple strategies that you can help them to identify. And one thing that if they do have quite significant tactile issues, we actually go for the single unit, because then you don't need to be worried batteries and all that paraphernalia.
Okay, so ladies, the reveal. What do you do? Now those of you who didn't raise your hand, you will see the reason.
So what did we do? We actually implanted him. Of course, you probably were expecting that. These are the results at 12 months post-right implantation. Why we decided for the right is literally, you could see that he was a candidate in either here. Didn't really matter. But what we decided to go for the right was purely because there was a tiny bit of left residual hearing there. So we thought that people wearing that hearing aid on the left would be useful. And he goes from 0 to 73% phonemic score, and we considering second CI.
The sum up of the challenges that we are facing in our older CI recipients, but I'm happy that we discussed it already during the discussion. So what about limited or family and social support? There we have to be in close communication with the other professionals. So not only with the audiologists or with the colleagues working in the same clinic, but also with the colleagues working in the nursing homes, for example. Solution for the lack of speech language therapists. Maybe there's solution of having applications available. What about the accelerated cognitive decline in our older adults? Like Dayse also mentioned, it's part now of the screening prior to cochlear implantation to screen our older CI recipients for their cognitive abilities. Of course, general health, vestibular and skin condition is more important in this older population. Another thing that was not yet mentioned is that especially in the older adults, they are seeking less for help when they are having a hearing loss. So there we think that awareness should be raised more for older adults. And then the limited fine motor skills were also addressed during this session. So great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We had a very successful bilateral cochlear implant in an older patient. And as you see, the main take-home message of Professor Dayse Tavora and Professor Griet Mertens is something we've mentioned this afternoon also, and it's the teamwork. If we work together, radiologists, speech therapists, surgeons, radiologists, all of us, the results are much, much better. And now we are going to keep our journey traveling really close to here because we're staying in Chennai. And we're here to meet my very good friend, Professor Mohan Kameswaran. He is the Managing Director and Senior Consultant of Madras ENT Research Foundation and visiting professor at the Raja Mutia Medical College Hospital and Sri Ramachandra Medical University in Chennai. He is one of the pioneers of cochlear implant surgery in India and was responsible for starting cochlear implant surgery in many cities in this country, as well as Sri Lanka, Nepal, and other countries. Mohan is the first surgeon in South and Southeast Asia to perform ABI, and also the first pediatric brainstem implant in Asia in 2009. This is 16 years ago. We are absolutely honored to have him as an active member of the hearing group, and in my case, as a very good friend. Mohan.
Thank you, Javier, and it's an absolute honor to host all of them here in Chennai. I'm going to be talking about a child, a 5-year-old child who was born with congenital bilateral profound hearing loss. It was born of non-consanguineous marriage, and I say this because consanguinity is still a big problem in this part of the world, not in India as a whole, but in this part, southern part of India. And the mother had maternal gestational diabetes, and the child was born preterm at 36 weeks. And there was also a breech presentation and therefore had a cesarean section, but the birth weight and the Apgar score was normal. The child was kept on an incubator for 5 days simply because it was preterm, but the developmental milestones were normal. The child was diagnosed with profound hearing loss and therefore was evaluated for a cochlear implantation. The CT and MRI scans were done, and it showed a narrow internal auditory meatus, the CT, with a cochlear nerve deficiency on both sides. So in fact, this child was actually sent to us for an ABI from another center. But when we evaluated the scans, we realized that there was an implantable cochlea. And of course, the internal auditory meatus, IAM, as I said, was very narrow, and the MRI showed a cochlear nerve deficiency. So is our protocol when we have an implantable cochlea but a cochlear nerve deficiency, we normally would go for electrophysiology, particularly a transtympanic EABR, or electrical auditory brainstem response. And this was performed. And as you can see on the right here, we managed to show some responses. But on the left side, the responses were absent. So this meant that we would take the right ear for implantation and would consider therefore a cochlear implant first. So this child is 5 years old. It's got a delayed speech language development, narrow internal auditory meatus on both sides with cochlear nerve deficiency. And you can see the transtympanic EABR showed responses on the right side. So parents were counseled regarding realistic expectations from a cochlear implant, which meant basically that we tell them, look, this child has a narrow, thin nerve, so we are not very sure about how successful a cochlear implant is going to be. And this we do as a video consultation. And so we get a video consent. So we tell them that, chances are it may work, it may not work. And if they ask me percentages, I tell them I can't tell you. And statistics only works for a group of people. It does not work in an individual. So it either works or it doesn't work. I can't say 50% works, so it doesn't work. So basically counsel the parents saying that, it may be that we do an implant and it may not work. So a child underwent right ear cochlear implantation in June 23. We had an uneventful surgery. We had a complete uneventful electrode insertion. Intra-op impedances were normal, showing that the device was fine. E-caps were satisfactory, which means that Ranjit allowed us to get out of theater. And basically, he says that he could produce some E-caps. Implant was switched on and the map was created. And the child was put into a very intensive auditory verbal habilitation. 5 months or 16 days, almost 6 months later, integrity and coupling was okay. Ground path impedance was fine. IFTs were all okay. And the child was having continued verbal habilitation up till that point. It was very regular with the habilitation. But the aided responses of the cochlear implant were very disappointing. They were well below the auditory spectrum, and really the child was not getting much hearing perception with the cochlear implant. And still we persisted up to 8 months, and still the map was done and integrity was fine, ground path impedance was fine, IFTs are okay. A new map was created, and it showed some improvement from the previous map, but still the aided responses were well below the auditory spectrum, and the child was not really hearing, was not having any serviceable hearing perception. So at 8 months, we had all sat together, the entire team. We said there's no improvement in the CAP and SIR scores. The habilitationists were very unhappy. It was a very unsatisfactory E-cap. And now, when they started putting up the intensity of the electrode, facial twitching also started on device usage. So this is an additional development when the new map was created.
Okay. So, well, you have the post-CT scan that you can see the implant, the electrode in the cochlea and the ABR. And for the discussion, so we have a 5-year-old girl that has apparently a very serious cochlear nerve deficiency. And one of the options was CI, and that was the one that was taken. Again, those with hands, raise your hand. Those who have do a cochlear implant in this patient. We have the majority of hands raised, great majority. Those who may have go for an ABI in this patient at the beginning. Only me, okay. Anyway, Mohan, would you go again for a cochlear implant at the beginning, even with 5 years of age?
Yes, yes, the answer is yes. Let me put it like this. If we have an implantable cochlea, which is technically implantable with a cochlear implant, even if the nerve is very, noticeable. Even if, the MRI shows an absent nerve. We've had situations where the implant is done very well. So we know that there are alternate pathways apart from the MRI not showing the nerve. Also, keep in mind that when you're talking about a cochlear nerve deficiency, the minimum that you need is a 3 Tesla MRI to first demonstrate the nerve, and 1.5 Tesla MRI is useless. And if you're going to be really talking about, identifying thin nerves, even a 3 Tesla MRI may not actually show a nerve, even if it is thin. It may not really show. So we can't swear by the radiology. So electrophysiology becomes very important. And if your transtympanic EABR is done preoperatively, and nowadays you have, of course, you have the ANTS, which is even better because it's even more near field, where you can intracochlear EABR can be done with 3 electrodes. If you get waves and it's very good, then you're very happy because the chances are that this child is going to do very well with the cochlear implant. But at the same time, if you don't get any waves, would you then say no? No, the answer is unfortunately, even today, the consensus of surgeons all over the world is that if you have an implantable cochlea, first do an cochlear implant. And if it doesn't work, then think about. So, it's I think the jury is still out there. I don't think we have a, very clear answer there. But the consensus of majority of the people I've discussed with would say that they would first do a cochlear implant if it's possible.
Well, I totally agree with you. I'm supposed not to give my opinion because I'm the moderator, but since you are the only brave surgeon that was able to face this audiology attendance, I will play the team with you. And I totally agree with him. My only difference is that when the time is so short, you almost only have one bullet because this girl is going to be implanted with an ABI close to 6 years of age or over 6 years of age, which is just the upper limit. So I completely agree with Professor Kameswaran that for patients with 2 bullets, you use the first bullet according to the time you have with a cochlear implant, and if it doesn't work, you move to the ABI. But in some cases, and this is very frequent in this kind of patients, the patient reaches you when you only have 1 bullet. And to be successful with 1 bullet, you need to start as soon as possible with that. So 5 years of age will be just the limit for this trial. 2, 3, 4 years, of course, you do a cochlear implant. If it doesn't work, you go to an ABI. But if you go to an ABI over 6 years of age, I don't think this is going to work.
In fact, this is actually a very important consideration, Javier, you brought up. The age of this child was really bordering. And we have another problem here. This child was funded by the government scheme in my state. It was given a free ABI. But again, the upper limit for the scheme is 6 years, which we said actually. Mm-hmm. So we can't break our own rules. So if the child crosses 6, even by a day, it doesn't get an implant. So we had that, pressure on us. But at the same time, the habilitationists and the audiologists both felt that at 6 months, that they needed a little more time to make the assessment. And then, you are absolutely helpless in a situation like that. So you have to listen to them, and they are definitely cleverer than you, when it comes to this. So when they tell you that, yes, 5 months, 15 days, it's not very good, but give it another 2 or 3 months. I think, I agree.
Agree with you. So what's the opinion of the audiologist here?
So I'm just wondering, given that you have to rule that by the age of 6, this is the maximum limit where you want to implant an ABI, and having seen the EABR done with the CI and also the transtympanic results on both sides, I was wondering, you just had 1 shoot. Why didn't you go for an ABI right away?
Why didn't I go for the ABI instead of the cochlear implant? Yeah, this is a very, logical, I would say, a very logical question from Anja. Unfortunately, Anja, the majority opinion of surgeons as of now in the world is that, if you have an implantable cochlea, first do that. And if it doesn't work, then go for a. And this is actually, I think, in a way, this is because of two reasons. One is because we don't have sufficient data of outcomes from ABI in pediatric age group yet. And I think the second reason is probably a misplaced fear of ABI surgery in children. These 2 points. I think with more experience, people would come down to your line of thinking, because this child would definitely would probably be a good candidate for an ABI, considering that even the ABR was not all that great. So yes, I agree with you. That would be probably the logical next step, but we haven't reached there yet. So that's the problem, I think.
Ranjit, go ahead.
Well, with respect to this particular patient, there are a lot of other factors we need to consider. Number one, the decision is not made by the audiologist or the surgeon alone, but the patients as well. But we need to give them the realistic expectation, even with ABI. But even with an ABI, I cannot tell them or convince them the child is going to do much better with cochlear implant, or with ABI, they're going to do better. But ABI, of course, is a little more sophisticated procedure compared to cochlear implant. So decision is also made by the patients, number one. And number two is the outcomes with ABI. Even the best outcomes with ABI, if you compare it with the outcomes with patients with hypoplastic nerve, there's not much of a great difference. If you look at, it varies from case to case. But so you can't even convince them that with ABI, the outcome is going to be better than the CI in this case. And if you have to convince them, there need to be a proof. Unless otherwise it's proven that the child is not benefiting with the cochlear implant, there's no reason why the parents are willing to go ahead with an ABI. That's number one. So there are too many factors involved in a patient like this when we make a decision to go for CA and ABI. So, looking at the outcomes after 6 months, 8 months, the parents themselves are convinced that they need to go for some other technology. And that's very important for us when you go for an ABI. It's a parent, those who have to make a call, not the team. The team is there to give all the possible solutions and evidences, but the call has to come from the family.
Good point.
Artur, no, wait a second. You want to answer, Ranjit?
Ranjit? No.
No.
I wouldn't dare answer Ranjit.
Okay, we have more questions. We have your
I would like
answer.
I would like very shortly support this strategy, because even I think that everything was done to maximize the outcomes in terms of rehabilitation, intensive rehabilitation. Even this 6-month sort of a failure to have a functional hearing, it's still, in my opinion, a very a good starting point, because the child learned how to cooperate. There was a lot of educational and rehabilitative work. So if now we switch to the ABI, this intensive, let's say, effort should actually pay off.
Okay, we have a question in the audience, and we have a question from the chat.
So, quick questions. One is that, so we know that in such cases, the progress could be really slow, especially even in, when we look at thin nerves. And over the period of time, they do start doing well, and the initial time taken is a little longer than the regular CI cases. So first question is how long we should wait till we say that this is no progress at all. Sometimes in our case scenario also, we have seen patients actually no progress till 6 or 7 months, and then they start doing something later on. That's first. Will corticals be helpful and in such cases in making such decisions? Because in this case, what we see is we had some kind of ECAPs initially. So it's not that there was, that was one of the things which probably helped you decide that we should go for it. So how can we now be sure that what kind of benefits we can convince the parents, tell to the parents to go for the?
I think how long you would wait depend on the age of the child. So, if it is a 1-year-old child, I wouldn't mind waiting, from even another 2 or 3 months extra. But I think realistically, if in 9 months, child has not shown any auditory percept, very unlikely. But I think that's sufficient time. Usually 6 months is what we give them. In this case, the team felt we could give another 2-3 months. It is actually pushing the limits as far as I'm concerned. But we said, okay, so and still there was no benefit. Cortical potentials, yes, if you have some auditory percept, probably would have been, but if the child is not getting any auditory percept at all, I doubt a cortical potential is going to help very much. Maybe, you can do it. Certainly Ranjit does a lot of that. But I don't think, if the child has got no auditory percept at all, that you're going to be getting much of a cortical. And maybe Dayse can correct me.
Okay, we have a question from the chat. Professor Hagen. Professor Hagen is the president of the hearing group. So we have to give him the word, otherwise he will cut this connection.
No. Can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you, Rudolf. Go ahead.
So first of all, congratulations to this highly interesting roundtable. I'm really enjoying it from a special place, Sardinia in Italy. But this is an extremely interesting case, especially for decisions. And I completely agree with Mohan. Maybe the delay up to the age of 5 years was the problem. If the child would have been implanted earlier, then the decision to do after failure in cochlear implantation, switch to ABR, would be easier. But you never forget, ABR is a very difficult and risky surgery. You agree, Mohan? That's why we would always start with an EABR prior to surgery. And of course, a child getting sooner or later 6 years old, this is not the ideal case for both either CI or ABI. So maybe the decisive point was that there was a delay over the years. So what's your opinion, Mohan?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Right? You're absolutely right. Of course, it would have been ideal if this child had presented earlier. I think a lot of things would have been solved. But I don't blame the parents also, because they had been going from center to center. A lot of we were probably the third or fourth cochlear implant center to which they presented, and they had been shunted from one to the other. People talking about implanting, not implanting, sitting on it. So that's a delay of almost 2 years happened because of that, I think. But I agree with you completely. I think this whole scenario would have changed. The child had come to us at the age of 3 or 2, would have been much better. And I think we would have had a, more comfortable time scale for decision making.
Okay, thank you, Rudolf. We have to continue because we're almost over.
Yes, but I have to tell the audience, the important point was what Mohan told us, that was the pre-operative counseling of the parents, that the expectations for the implant are very low. And this is the most decisive point of this case for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Mohan, can you tell us the reveal? Thanks, Rudolf. We are almost finishing. We are almost out of time.
So based on all the experience, we advised the explantation of the cochlear implant and simultaneous auditory brainstem implantation. This was done just a couple of months ago, in December, early December, and his child was switched on after about, I think, 3 weeks, and child is interestingly is doing very well. Actually, is having much better with the ABI than with the with a cochlear implant. Sorry. And you can see that, you can start to see much better, the EABR is far, far better with the ABI than we got with the cochlear implant. So chances are, child is benefited from the auditory brainstem implant. And I put up this case only to show that, this is a gray zone between a cochlear implant and an ABI. And we need to be looking at it. We can't have, set rules. We have to look at the child individually and work at the child individually. But there are these cases where we have to switch over from a cochlear implant to an ABI, and ABI gives better results in children than with a cochlear implant in a child like this.
Okay, so we have one last, I think it's more a comment than a question from the chat, saying that it is easy after poor result to say ABI would be better. But with present EABR and poor outcome from ABI compared to CI, the choice was in favor of CI. I think we all agree the only problem is when is the limit that we can try both procedures. Okay, so we are almost out of time. I don't know about you, but almost 1 hour and a half have gone by so fast. This is the hearing group. I showed you before, this is our annual meeting last 2024 in Dubai. And before we finish, I want just you to know a few practical issues. We have a webpage, www.hearing.com, where you can find things as good as the hearing preservation calculator, the counseling platform for hearing conservation, and the EAS feeding tool. We have a new place in our webpage, which is the Hearing Health Initiatives, and you can visit that. And if you like, you can endorse our Hearing Health Initiative by just going into our webpage. We have been dedicated for the last 17 years to create quality standards. And these quality standards are summarized in our webpage and include children, adults, and older adults. And we have a learning platform there, which is called the Hearing Boost. If you go to the Hearing Boost, you can find things like this. We have new hearing courses in 2024, and it's 9 new hearing courses, and we have more in there from previous years and more coming for future occasions. This roundtable may receive an accreditation. If you are interested in points from the CPD accrediting company, you can just send us an email at boost@hearing.com, and after some time you will receive the accreditation for this hearing roundtable. Well, I told you, hearing is a very, very active group. These are some of the conferences we are attending this year. Well, actually, the first one is this one, so we are already here, but we are going to visit Frankfurt, Rostock, Kuala Lumpur, and Naples, and some other conferences. And from our part, we would love to receive in our webpage your questions, comments, opinions, any doubt you have. Just send us an email to www.hearing.com, and we will answer you with the response of your doubts, questions, or comments. It's been a pleasure to have you here on this hybrid event. This is not the traditional hearing roundtable. I love to see people's faces on stage, and I hope to see you next time, even if this is only an online meeting. Thank you very much for the people there in their houses, in the online connection, and thank you to the panelists for giving such a wonderful presentation during this roundtable. Thanks a lot.